Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Here's a chance to exercise your cold email muscles. Imagine you're a freelance logo designer. How would you use cold email to land all the A-list clients that you could handle? In this episode, Jeremy and I discussed who you should go after, how exactly should you build a list of hot prospects, and we include the exact website and search filters that we'd use. Finally, what email copy should you include in your first 3 cold emails to give yourself the best chance of landing your dream clients? Oh, and one more thing. We know you're not a freelance logo designer, but don't worry. You'll find plenty of takeaways on cold email strategy, persuasion, and copywriting in this episode, especially if you have a service to sell. Enjoy.
Hey, Jack, what are we going to talk about today?
Let's say I'm a freelance logo designer. So how could I use cold email to win some new clients? And as we dive into this answer, let's talk about who to reach out to, how to build a list, and what to say in a cold email.
All right, rock and roll.
So let's tackle the who first. And by the way, this is sort of a head-to-head strategy contest here. So we're not going into the nitty-gritty, but this is like who can come up with a strategy that'll work best.
Hold on a second. So we got this designer or logo designer. Maybe we could start from scratch, right? So let's say he wants to start today. So what does he need to do? And I think there is more thing than even who he should target first. So one of the things I'm thinking of is, what do you actually want to sell? Do you want to sell your product or yourself? So in other words, are you looking for a job or are you looking for a client? And that may be like a subtle distinction, but I think it's a huge mindset shift, actually.
I like where you're going with this. So instead of just launching into it, take a step back and figure out what it really is you're seeking here.
What's my positioning? Am I going to serve, long contract projects with long sales cycles, or what industry do I want to tackle, right? Do I want to tackle established companies, or do I want to go with startups, right? There's a lot of questions to ask yourself first as to what is it my angle here?
So the way I approached this, I didn't really realize what I was doing at the time, but I just thought about the VIP list. So I could say, okay, so certainly there are many companies out there that need to pay someone to make their logo. But instead of seeking those people out, those may be the one-off projects. And then he's back to the grind or she's back to the grind to find more work. I'm thinking it makes most sense to reach out to the kind of company that needs many logos done month after month.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, one of my friends who has, his own company doing something else, but at some point he's designing newsletters for companies. It's like part of the package of the offer. So your designer could actually strike a joint venture with this person and actually provide this service on the side for whoever business is signing to his business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that's sort of where my strategy begins. So the who I think they need to target is these companies that need repeat logos designs so that winning one of these agreements will put them in business for months at a time. And I've identified these as, let's say, marketing agencies that do logo work, but a step further, I'm going after marketing agencies that are currently looking to hire a remote graphic designer.
Just a small digression, but I think it's an interesting one. I had one cartoonist actually using QuickMail.
Oh, nice.
And he targeted companies who needed newsletters or illustration for their newsletters. And as part of it, he was including some sample or free sample of what he's doing. And I think that was like such a great strategy. It's exactly that. You're going to VIP people who have monthly repeating businesses. And in fact, after 2 months, he canceled the subscription and just said, like, what's going on? You had like a crazy reply rate and so on. He said, I got no time for more businesses.
Amazing.
And I thought that was great.
And okay, so his approach was going after the companies already doing, let's say, weekly or monthly newsletters.
Exactly. And they needed illustrations. They usually have a little budget or things like that. So I mean, that worked great.
So should I go into some nitty gritty how I would actually build this list? Or do you want to speak about the who a little more?
I had another question before we dive into this. I just also think about how big is my market? because that will really determine strategy and the tactics I'm going to use. Like, for example, if you're influencer that you want to go after, there is only a handful of those in the area or my addressable market,
Right.
then I'm going to use a different strategy versus there are 1,000 influencers. Because if there is 1,000 of them, could use some tactics and have way more like trials, or I could have way more experiments if the market is bigger, basically.
That's true. So I'm actually not so worried about the market size here. In fact, I've tried to trim it down to, and I'll show you how, but I've trimmed it down to only about 400 organizations that might make sense. It's probably more closer to 50.
Hold on, let me ask you the question. What number is actually okay for then doing cold email?
When I explain that this market is agencies doing repeating logo design work that are currently looking to hire a remote graphic designer.
Oh, that looks good already.
That list doesn't have to be that big. I mean, hypothetically, you could reach out to 2 people and sense.
And be in business by Monday. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, very possible. So I think the number I wrote down here was there's probably 30 agencies on my list right now that if we did a little bit of pruning, they would stick around as like a real verified prospect that would be perfect for this VIP list. And to me, that's plenty. In fact, we keep going back to this, but if they landed 1 or 3 accounts here, then they're like that cartoonist that mentioned that, they have no more time for prospecting, they're in business.
I love that. And in fact, it boils down to, can you actually find a trigger or certain state of a company that is in deep need of your offer? And if you can find that, then you don't need like thousands of prospects. You can just go with whoever is going to buy your services because they need it desperately.
I see what you're saying. So instead of maybe the agency approach, or no, basically you can take this agency approach. You're just saying, if you've got a short list of people who are ready to give you their credit card information so you can get to work, then your job is much simpler. You don't need to worry about finding thousands of companies.
Exactly. You need to run less experiments. They're already qualified. They're good to go.
Okay. And do you have any notes, Jeremy, on perhaps a hotter list than these agencies that are currently hiring remote graphic designers?
It's a great target. It may depend on how, the sort of like scope of work. Are you actually willing to also do some illustration that are not necessarily logo exactly per se on a brand, or those sort of thing, like maybe on a product? Yeah, maybe there is companies with lots of products. I wouldn't know what company could do that, but maybe there is like a cycle of products. Every month they do a new product or something like that.
Right. There's something like companies that have food like potato chips. Every time they create a new flavor, they're going to need a logo. They're going to have a budget for it. These kinds of companies may be more in line with what you're describing there.
Yeah, potentially. Or for example, some companies that have a new game every 3 months, for example. Or companies like that requires like a new logo. At the end of the day, yeah, we're moving around the same subject, but you may have like another example or last one, maybe.
Just one more. So this one's a little bit zoomed out, a little more untargeted, but imagine that you could position yourself as sort of the app logo designer. And every time somebody uploads an app to the iTunes store or the Google Play Store, you can get alerted that they just pushed a new app, and maybe on their 2.0 release, you can talk to them about revamping their logo, something like this,
No, I don't think that will work. First of all, you're too late.
Yeah.
And then the second is like most of the company will go bust before they even consider a 2.0.
Probably so. All right. So then
or they'll use their crappy design. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. So we're sticking with marketing agencies that outsource design. All right, cool. So here's how I would go ahead and build that list. It's pretty straightforward. I'd go to Indeed.com. It's a job posting site. I would type in, with quotes, remote graphic designer, and leave the location blank. Click search. 425 jobs comes up. And of those 425, if I narrowed them down by making sure they were marketing agencies and that they did lots of logo work in their portfolio, it's safe to assume that that list of 425 could be pruned down to around 30 or 50 companies to reach out to. And this number's very much okay with the kind of campaign we're putting together, because these are VIP clients that could potentially be won here.
I'll do probably the same thing. I actually wrote down Upwork And also 99 Design. I know this is a platform you probably don't want to go because as a logo designer, this is pretty difficult to get like repeat job from that because obviously people choose from and you may not be chosen. But what's important about that is you actually look at the wording that your target audience or future clients are looking for. So maybe they say, sexy logo or whatever kind of thing that you can then reuse in your cold email approach and say,
or fast turnaround.
yeah, fast turnaround, whatever is the benefit that they're looking for. And then you can reuse the same language into the email or the cold email you're going to do. So more chances that it's going to strike a chord.
Along the same vein there, you can see the hourly rate that their job is for, and you can crunch some numbers and come back to them saying, based on what you're currently hiring, you could probably save this many dollars per logo.
It's a typical ad that say things like, should be adaptable to changes or whatever. And then you see the prices is like $50. And then the other with $5,000 is like serious and on time or whatever kind of thing. So
yeah,
the language may adapt as well to your target audience.
That's true. So the language that the companies are using in their ads could probably move them up the list of who to go after and also maybe cancel them completely based on if they don't have a budget. They're looking for, let's say, an intern who's willing to work for free, for example. Those will be scrubbed.
Not necessarily that you're going after these. It's more like to figure out what language the company that are willing to pay that amount are using.
Oh, got it. So just market research.
Right? So if I say like, yo, dude, you're going to have a fast turnaround, but, those companies that pay 5K
Brilliant.
and more are not really into that language type, then that's no point saying that. But maybe that language type, they are more worried about security or or confidentiality or stuff like that, and that's what you then will want to use if you want that type of salary.
So Jeremy, you're saying jump over to 99 Designs or Upwork and just read through a lot of job postings for the high class sort of unlimited budget kind of projects that you want.
I mean, it depends because you may effectively get longer sales cycles with higher budget. So it's a choice on your end to say, where do I want to position myself? Yes, and then can go in with this strategy.
Just sort of picking out these phrases or the benefits that the companies describe. That's firepower that you can add to your cold email, which is a good transition here. Now we need to finish this off. We need to tell our listeners what we recommend putting in the first email or maybe the first couple emails that will get this conversation started so that they can become a repeat freelance logo designer for this agency.
Go for it, Jack.
I'm going to start off using the fox and the crow. I'm going to send a compliment to kick things off. And this is easy to do, especially if you're doing your homework and if you're dealing with a list size between 30 and 50 prospects. Shame on you if you don't. What you can do right here, congratulate them on winning a big account and maybe drop in a comment about that project, why you liked it, or something about a particular recent work that they would be appreciative to know that you took notice on, right? So something that I have jotted down, and this is very much a draft form, but you could say something like, hey, congrats on winning the project with IBM. Love the mobile UI work you guys did, by the way. And next, I'm going to make a small ask here. I'm going to say, since you're hiring remote graphic designers, would you be open to working with freelancers as well? Another agency, you can drop in a similar agency if you want. Another agency says this typically reduces overhead by 15% without sacrificing on quality. And you can include that as a PS or whatever. But notice my ask here is just, would you be open to working with freelancers? Simple, yes or no. And if they get back to you, you're off to the races.
I love that. And depending who you're going for, you could also use reciprocity. So let's say, for example, they're not having IBM as client, but they have a lot of volume, right? So they have a lot of, let's say, whenever someone, uses their platform, then they also need some logos, and therefore, they send you that sort of work. Then in this case, what I'll do is I'll say like, hey, I looked at a few of logo that you created recently. Here are a few of my ones, kind of thing. And then you'll say maybe the 5 next one will be on me. And if you want to carry on, that's sort of like foot in the door kind of approach. I probably use something like that.
Okay, take me back through that so I understand. You're going to use reciprocity in order to do that. Are you offering one of the logo done maybe for free at first to get your foot in the door here?
So I probably say something like, the next 5 logo are on me. You can send me your description or whatever. And if you find them worthy enough, then
We can talk about.
yeah, we can talk about, producing more for you because I still have some free time.
Okay, and what I like about that, Jeremy, is if I was approached with this email, it'd be very difficult to ignore, and I would almost certainly take them up on the offer. And what's exciting is before you go ahead and send off this very generous email, you've had a chance to review the agency, make sure their budget, their work, their projects are the perfect client for you, so that if you are able to get a yes from them, you would be ecstatic to go ahead and drum up 5 sketches for them if it would potentially lead you to a long-term contract. I think that's a good strategy if you're really serious about working with a particular agency.
That's a very important note because you don't want to offer your free resources to everyone. So you have to make sure that your list is super highly targeted. And if you get that job, that will lead to a few years of a recurring job and not just someone who doesn't end up just using your logo and don't want to pay and stuff like that. So yeah.
They need to sort of earn the right to receive that offer from you.
Another thing that I also draw on is probably social proof if I have some, like maybe I worked with other agencies. So I can say, here are a few examples of portfolio that I've done over the last few months working with agencies such as yours, something like that.
Jeremy, we're on the same page here. I've split this up. So the second email I would send would include pretty much exactly what you just mentioned. So I'll just read this quick little draft here. It's email 2 would basically be like, hey, in case it helps, I've attached a logo that I made for XYZ company. They said, and here's where you're going to make sure the testimonial reflects all the research that you did in your 99 designs phase when you were reading through projects to figure out the keywords here. Hey, in case it helps, I've attached a logo I made for XYZ company. They said, it's never been easier to work with XYZ. Obviously, like you're not making up a testimonial, but if you're lucky enough to have testimonials from great clients, pick the one that reflects their benefits, their sort of needs most, and drop it in the second email so that they can see your work and they've got hopefully a raving testimonial from an agency that they can identify with. That's going to position you and your work hopefully above all the other candidates that they're speaking with.
Yeah, I was imagining something like they say I'm the best designer on earth and things like that. That'd be probably
You don't
not
have to
really.
do that, right? Like I always think about the iPhone billboards that are everywhere now. For a long time, they would just have photos taken by an iPhone. So they could have had a billboard that said, iPhone has 80 megapixels and it's the best camera on the market. But instead, they just show what the phone is able to do. So in this instance, you don't have to rave about how good you are. Instead, just include a portfolio that they can check out. If your work is as great as you think it is, then they should be able to contact you about it. The last little note here, the call to action on email 2, I'd recommend saying, is bringing on a veteran logo designer worth a quick chat?
Oh
Right.
man, that's good. I got your next photo up actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
In essence, it'll be something like haven't heard about you, and I may actually bring some scarcity at this point. I still have a slot or something like that. Is that worth me waiting for your answer or something like that?
Ooh, that is good. And the cool thing here is like, I'm very much anti fake scarcity. But in all reality, if you're sending this email out to 30 candidates, not everyone will be able to work with you. You do have a finite number of hours in a day, projects you can take. And like you said, just listing that in the follow up, just saying, hey, I've got room for maybe one more client this month. Should I consider you or maybe just close it out? That kind of thing, when I'm more available.
Or should I contact you next month instead?
Love it.
I'm a big fan of bringing scarcity without really showing scarcity. So it's a great way of saying like it's a temporary scarcity, but I don't know when it's going to reopen. It's a great one.
And so here's the trick. If you're going to use scarcity in your emails, you can't come off like it's a power move that you're threatening them. It's now or never, buddy, or else. And because I think, Jeremy, we've done some teardowns.
Yeah.
We'll just be like, seriously? Like, well, am I being squeezed here by the mob? Like, it's a turnoff immediately. So if you can carefully just casually mention that this isn't going to be around forever, and if you want it, you kind of got to take advantage of it, sort of massage that into the copy, and you're off to a good start.
You could even spin it to something positive in terms like, hey, when I'm going with a client, it's usually for a very long time. And I still want to give you a shot because I really enjoy what you're doing. I think you're blah, blah, blah. Is that worth that to chat this month, or should I recontact you, when my availabilities, are back or something like that?
I hope if any freelance logo designers are listening, they're taking notes and sending some cold emails next week because
they're all dead now with 99 design. Kill them.
Probably so. But nonetheless, a good overview on how you might be able to drum up some extra work as a freelancer using nothing but cold email and some clever words. Not even clever words, maybe just like a good approach.
Do you think we're missing something at this stage, Jack?
Well, yeah. So here's what we're missing. We've only talked about an email plus a couple of follow-ups. If you're serious about it, 2 follow-ups won't be enough. So keep at it. The other part is eventually you're going to want to keep going after new prospective clients, right? So this list on Indeed.com that we just mentioned will come and go. At that point, you'll have to figure out where's your next opportunity, starting by, like you said, Jeremy, like in the beginning of the episode, what are your values? What are you really trying to do here? And work backwards to find the right people that you want to work with in order to accomplish that.
My big thing here is if they tell you no, it's always like a not yet. And if they say, it's not possible or keep me posted, then do keep them posted. So in a year time, if you happen to have some time again, just say like, hey, just checking out, would you happen to need a designer this year? Because I'm a huge fan of persistence. I actually got the best job in my life by actually being persistent and keeping people posted. So initially, just as a very quick side note, initially I've been rejected from this job. I went there physically for an interview. The guy say, yeah, you're good, but we're not going to take you, but keep me posted. But it was like this genuine, like keep me posted kind of thing, a very casual one. But I didn't know much English at that time. So for me, it was like, oh, he really wants me to keep him posted. So I actually did keep him posted and say, hey, just wanted to let you know, I effectively got like 2 job offers and so on. And at that point, he realized I'm serious. And he said, okay, that may be unfair of me to ask you that now you got 2 jobs offer, but if you want to work for me, then it's okay. And I say, hell yeah, I'm coming.
Nice. You made some money on that follow-up email then.
Actually, the salary was less, but the company was just awesome to work for.
If you think about what that took out of your life, writing 3 sentences and what it got you.
It was by phone, actually.
Oh, okay. But the principle still applies, right?
Yeah, the principle is the same. Persistence pays off big time.
One other facet we haven't talked about, and I would be surprised if this doesn't end up happening, is the kind of freelance designer that takes the initiative to drum up clients via cold email and is able to, let's say, produce sort of a winning formula, so to speak, for getting clients. That person won't be freelancing for very long. I imagine they'll start an agency, they'll hire designers themselves and go out and find bigger, better projects. And their business may morph entirely just because if once you sort of nail down how to get clients, you kind of can pick and choose what you want to build.
Well, that's one way. The other way that I see things happening is that person actually doesn't need to do any more cold emails or cold outreach just because they'll get so many referrals. I mean, that illustrator is still doing illustration. He's not like passing on to someone else just because he loves doing illustrations.
That's an awesome point. And one thing we didn't mention is maybe the first place that you would start if you were looking to get more work as a freelance logo designer is just go back to your past clients and ask them if they've got more logo projects for you. That's the lowest hanging fruit. I'm a little bit ashamed I didn't mention that at first because, come on, that would work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, or if they know someone who do, right? So I'm sorry if you were actually pausing the tape and performing the actions in chronological order. Now you need to redo everything again.
Yeah, starting by going back. And let's wrap this up with one thing that you had mentioned to me a while back, Jeremy. It was something like, if you're looking for a job, don't ask somebody if they would hire you. Instead, ask them, ask them if they know somebody who needs a particular, right?
Because if you ask them, let's say, for example, that firm is hiring logo designer, right? But then you could go to that person if you know them and just ask them like, hey, I'm looking for a job at the moment. Would you know anyone who is looking for, logo designer? Or would you have any advice on how to go about finding client as a logo designer? Because then it's much easier for the person to, not be confronted with, should I give you the job or not? And also it's much more powerful if that comes from them saying like, but you know what, we're actually looking for, logo designer. Maybe you could fit, and then
let me recommend you. Yeah, right.
Yes, and that would work way better. It's a push versus pull approach.
Brilliant. Jeremy, I've exhausted all of the nuggets I have on this cast, but it looks like you're on a roll here. Do you have any other things to leave the listener with?
No, Jack, I think that's good enough for now. I think we should close it here, but you had some really good points too, so.
Cool. All right, Jeremy, great cast.
Great cast, Jack. So, if you're looking for how to approach getting paid for your services, here is what you need to remember from this episode. Number one, you want to create a VIP list. That means going after the people who will give you repeat work, so you don't have to find one by one clients. Number two, you want to search on job posting boards to find out how to speak the language of people in need of your skills, so you know what benefits and keywords will resonate most with them. Number three, try different influence factors in your emails. You want to use liking, a reciprocity, social proof, and like we discussed, smart scarcity. And finally, number four, focus on building relationships. Why? Because persistence works, and most people will be willing to give you a chance if they see you're genuinely trying. Oh yeah, and number five, if possible, talk to past clients for more work or referrals and advice.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast.
So they can send awesome emails.
And make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.